All right, ninth graders, today we are working on pages 96 and the back side we're also working on page 97. So at the very top here, we're talking about features of functions, and here's what you need to know. Alonzo and Maria were floating in inner tubes down a river enjoying their day. Alonzo noticed that sometimes the water level was higher in some places than in others. Maria noticed that there were times they seemed to be moving faster than at other times. To learn more about the river, Alonzo and Maria collected data throughout the trip because obviously that sounds like a super fun way to spend your tubing trip. So here's what
Christy Wilson, please call 5561. Christy Wilson, please call 5561.
So here's what Alonzo did. Alonzo created a table of values by measuring the depth of the water every 10 minutes. I like to think that Alonzo had a stick and was measuring the water with a ruler. Who knows? Okay, so for example, at 0 minutes, the water was 4 feet deep. After 10 minutes, Alonzo measured and it was 6 feet deep, and so on. So you can see sometimes it was really shallow, like 4 feet. Other times, oh my goodness, 12 feet, super scary. So the first question, does this table represent a function? Well, what's the definition of a function? Our definition of a function was that every input has exactly one output. Okay, so does 0 minutes have one depth? Yeah, the depth is 4 feet at 0 minutes. Is there another place where we have 0 minutes and a different depth? No. And then at 10 minutes, there's a single depth, 6 feet. At 50 minutes, there's a single depth. So every single amount of minutes has a single amount of depth. So you're going to write that in there. Yes, this is a function. Why? Because every minute has one water depth. If you didn't hear what I said, rewind and write it down. Okay, so let's look at Maria. Maria created a graph by collecting data on a GPS unit that told her the distance she had traveled over a period of time. So you're looking at this one, and Maria at 0 minutes, they'd gone not very far. And you can see that as time went on, they kind of sped up at some times and they slowed down. But does this represent a function? Does every input have a single distance that it's traveled? Yeah, like at 50 minutes, there's only one dot. Another thing that we know is this passes the vertical line test. I could draw a vertical line anywhere on here and it would only cross one place on the graph. So yes, this is a function. Every input, every time has one distance traveled. Okay, so what are we doing for today then? Because you just finished the front side of this paper, your job, and this is going to be a really short video because you have to do the rest on your own, you are doing the back side of this paper. So Sierra looked at the data collected by her friends and she made several of her own observations. You are going to discuss these observations with your father. That's so weird. I think it's supposed to say partner, but right now you're just working alone. But once you agree on an answer or decide on an answer, you're going to mark that you agree with it or disagree with it. And you're going to tell me why. So for example, the depth of the water increases and decreases throughout the 120 minutes of floating down the river. Now, right here, we are talking about the depth of the water. Does the depth, which one's depth? That is Alonzo. Does the depth increase and decrease throughout the time traveled? Well, do you see how it increases to 6, increases to 8, increases to 10, and then decreases back to 6? Yeah, that one I would probably agree with because the depth of water does go up and down the whole time. Okay, let's look at number 2. The distance traveled is always increasing. So this one's talking about distance traveled. That's not Alonzo. Alonzo was the depth. So the distance traveled was Maria. Is the distance traveled always increasing? We'll look at that graph, decide if that graph is always increasing. Your job is to finish page 97. And yes, by finishing, you have to have an explanation. And if you can't think of an explanation, maybe chat with somebody, see if you can figure it out, or ask Miss Johnson or whatever. Come up with an explanation because we're going to go over this for tomorrow's notes. But for today's work, you do need to submit a photo. This should take you at least probably 10, 15 minutes to come up with a reason for each of these. Do your best. Submit your photo when you're done.